Life moves at a silver velocity, a blur of light and sound that requires a steady hand to navigate and a brave heart to survive. We capture the high-speed moments that define our era in stunning high definition. Hit subscribe now and keep up with the pace of the future.
First time I understood that my own family had written me off, I was standing in the marble lobby of a Charleston hotel I'd spent the last 4 years building. My stepmother had just told the concierge, loud enough for the people checking in behind her to hear, that the woman in the gray suit holding a clipboard was probably, "With housekeeping, sweetheart, can you find someone in management?" That woman was me. I was the management. I owned the building. I did not correct her. I did not even blink. I smiled the same smile I give every guest who walks through those doors, and I told her my brother's rehearsal dinner would begin in the Magnolia Room at 6. She didn't recognize my voice. She never had. "My name is Hadley Whitcomb, and I want to tell you about the weekend my brother got married at my hotel, and how my family discovered, about 36 hours too late, that the daughter they had been pretending was a disappointment had quietly become the woman who held the keys to the entire weekend. I'll start at the beginning because the ending only makes sense if you understand the shape of the years that led to it. I grew up in Greenville, South Carolina, the middle child between a brother who could do no wrong and a younger sister who was so charming she could have sold sand at the beach. My father ran a regional insurance firm. My mother died when I was 7. My stepmother, Caroline, married my father when I was 9, and from the first dinner she cooked in our house, I understood my place in the new arrangement. My brother got the chicken breast. I got the thigh. My sister, who was only 4, got whatever she pointed at. Caroline cut my brother's meat for him when he was 12 years old and laughed about it like it was charming. She told me I should be grateful she even set a place for me at the table, since technically I wasn't her child. I learned very early that there were 2 kinds of people in my house. There were the ones whose names came first when guests visited. Trent, Hudson, that's my husband Bill's son, he's at Clemson, he's pre-law. And there were the ones who came up only when someone counted the place settings. Oh, and Hadley. My mother had a name that nobody spoke anymore, and I sometimes felt like I had inherited her ghost more than her hair color. It would be dishonest to say that my father didn't love me. He did. He just loved me the way you love a houseplant. You remember it exists. You water it when you notice, and then you forget about it for 3 weeks and wonder why it looks tired. He provided. He paid for things. He gave me a hug at Christmas, but he never asked me a single question about my actual life. And on the day I graduated salutatorian from my high school, he forgot the ceremony because he was driving Trent to a state baseball tournament. Caroline brought me a grocery store cake when I got home. It said, "Congratulations, graduate," in cursive, and the graduate had been written over what was clearly someone else's name in a different color icing. She didn't even bother to get me my own cake. My sister, Marley. She was different. She was Caroline's daughter, but she was also a child, and children don't know yet how to be cruel on purpose. Marley used to crawl into my bed when she had nightmares, and I used to braid her hair before school. I want to be clear about her, because she comes back into this story later, and I don't want anyone to think she was the villain. She wasn't. She was just born into the cast, same as me. The villain, if there is one, was my father's silence and my stepmother's smile. I went to the College of Charleston on a scholarship. My parents paid for Trent's tuition at Clemson outright, and when I brought home my financial aid letter, my father said, "Well, that's a relief," and slid it back across the table like it was a receipt he didn't need to keep. I worked the front desk at a boutique hotel on East Bay Street for 3 years to cover everything else. I learned the hospitality industry from the carpet up. I cleaned vomit out of a bridal suite at 2 in the morning during my junior year. I watched the assistant manager get fired for stealing tips off the housekeeping cart. I watched the GM walk a furious bride down to the wine cellar at midnight to pick out a replacement champagne after the original order got lost. I took notes, not on paper, in my head. By the time I graduated, I had been promoted to assistant front office manager. By 26, I was the youngest GM in the Charleston Hospitality Group's portfolio. By 29, I had taken every dollar I had saved, plus a loan from a woman named Augustine Pell, a former guest who had become a mentor and who believed in me in a way my own father never had. And I had bought a foreclosed boutique property on Meeting Street. I named it the Anslow. It was the maiden name of the mother I barely remembered. The Anslow was 32 rooms. It had a courtyard with a fountain that hadn't worked in 11 years when I bought it. The plaster was cracked, the elevator was original to 1923, and the previous owner had tried to run it as an extended stay for traveling nurses. I spent 14 months and almost every dime I had restoring it. I lived in a studio above a tobacconist's shop on King Street and ate cereal for dinner 4 nights a week. I learned how to read a profit and loss statement. I learned how to fire someone with dignity. I learned how to negotiate with linen suppliers in Italian, well enough anyway to get a 15% discount. When the Anslow opened, it sold out its first 4 weekends. Travel and Leisure ran a small feature on it 8 months in. By the time my brother announced his wedding, the Anslow had been profitable for 2.5 years, and I was in the early stages of acquiring a second property in Savannah. My family knew none of this. I want you to sit with that for a second, because it sounds impossible, but it isn't. It's actually quite easy to hide an entire life from people who never ask. My father knew I worked in hotels. Caroline assumed I was a receptionist somewhere. Trent, on the rare occasions he spoke to me, would say things like, "Still doing the hotel thing," with the same tone he might use to ask whether I was still doing kickboxing classes. Marley knew a little more. She had visited me in Charleston once 2 years before, and I had taken her to the Anslow without telling her I owned it. I told her I worked there. She had loved the lobby. She had said, "Hadley, this place is so pretty, you should bring Mom here sometime." I had smiled and said sure. I never did. I had a few reasons for keeping it quiet. The first was practical. I had seen what my family did to good things. They consumed them. My brother had crashed 2 cars before he was 23, and my father had bought him a third without a single conversation about consequences. If they had known I had any money, any success, any leverage, they would have arrived with their hands out and their feelings ready to be hurt. I had watched Caroline weaponize family loyalty against my father's sister for years over a trust fund, and I had no interest in becoming the next target. The second reason was less practical and more honest. I wanted something that was mine. Just mine. Not theirs to evaluate, not theirs to claim credit for, not theirs to diminish at Sunday dinner. I wanted to look at the Anslow and know that no one in that family had laid a finger on it. That every brick, every reservation, every glowing review on TripAdvisor was the result of my work and my decisions and my willingness to ruin my back hauling boxes up 3 flights of stairs when the elevator was being serviced. So when Trent called me last October to tell me he was getting married, I was genuinely happy for him. I had let go of needing his approval years ago, but he was still my brother, and the woman he was marrying, Eleanor Nora Van de Veer, was, by all accounts, lovely. I had met her twice. She had a kindness in her face that made me hope she would soften him. The wedding was set for the 3rd weekend in May. The reception venue, Trent told me on the phone, was going to be this incredible place in Charleston, Hadley. You wouldn't believe it. Caroline found it. It's apparently one of the hottest properties in the city. You might even know it. He laughed. It's called the Anslow. I had to put him on mute for a second so he wouldn't hear me laugh. I almost told him then. Almost. But there was a small, hard, quiet part of me that wanted to wait. Not for revenge. Not even for satisfaction. For something more like a witness. I wanted to see whether anyone in my family, given a full weekend at the place I had built, given the opportunity to look around with fresh eyes, would notice, would actually see what I had done. So I let it go. I told him congratulations. I told him I'd see them at the wedding. Then I called my general manager, Teresa Bowen, a 61-year-old former Navy logistics officer who had been with me since the Anslow opened, and I told her something that made her laugh harder than I had heard her laugh in years. "You want me to what? Run the weekend like you would for any other VIP wedding. Don't tell the staff I'm related to them. Don't tell anyone. Treat them well, charge them full rate, and make sure the bridal suite has the lavender pillow spray Nora requested in her email. I'm going to be on site as your GM in training." "GM in training," Teresa repeated. "Just for the weekend." She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Hadley, honey, are you sure?" "I'm sure." "Okay," she said. "But for the record, I think this is going to be a hell of a weekend." She had no idea. The wedding party arrived on a Thursday afternoon. I was wearing the gray suit I wear on inspection days, with my hair pulled back, no makeup beyond a little mascara and a clipboard. Teresa had introduced me at the morning staff meeting as Hadley, who's shadowing me this week as part of a cross-property management exchange. Nobody questioned it. The staff who knew me, meaning all of them, played along beautifully. One of my front desk girls, a graduate student named Esme, had to bite the inside of her cheek so hard when Caroline first walked in that I thought she was going to break skin. Caroline arrived first, with my father in tow. She marched up to the front desk like she was the bride herself. She was wearing a coral linen pantsuit and the same perfume she had worn since 1998. She looked at Esme and said, "We're with the Whitcomb Vandevere wedding. I'm the mother of the groom. I need to speak to whoever's in charge." Esme smiled the smile I had taught her to smile. "Of course, ma'am. Let me get our general manager for you." Teresa came out from her office. Behind her, holding a clipboard, was me. Caroline's eyes passed over me without registering anything. Not recognition, not familiarity, not even a flicker of, "Wait, doesn't she look like?" She looked at me the way you look at the salt shaker on a restaurant table. Useful, present, irrelevant. "I need to make sure the bridal suite is ready by 4, Caroline said to Teresa, "and I want the rehearsal dinner moved from the Magnolia Room to the courtyard. I think the courtyard would be more atmospheric." Teresa's smile didn't move. "The courtyard isn't available, ma'am. We have another event using that space tomorrow night and the setup will already be in progress." "Well, can't they move?" "No, ma'am, they can't." That was when Caroline turned to me, the woman in the gray suit with the clipboard, and said, "Honey, can you find someone in management?" I looked at Teresa. Teresa looked at me. There was, I will tell you honestly, a moment when my heart did something funny in my chest. It was not anger. It was not even surprise. It was the slow, quiet recognition that I had been right all along. That no matter what I built, no matter how high I climbed, this woman would never see me, because she had decided 30 years ago that I wasn't worth seeing. "I am management, ma'am," I said. My voice was even. Pleasant. "I'm shadowing the GM this week. Is there anything I can help you with?" Caroline blinked. Then she actually looked at me, for the first time since she had walked in, and her face did something I'm going to remember for a long time. It went through 3 expressions in about 2 seconds: confusion, recognition, and then, almost instantly, irritation. "Hadley?" she said. "Hi, Caroline." "What are you doing here?" "I work here," I said. "I told Dad I worked in hotels. He just never asked which one." She laughed. A short, sharp laugh, the kind she had been using to dismiss me since I was 9 years old. "Oh, well, what a coincidence. You work here, at Nora's venue?" She turned to my father, who had finally caught up. "Bill, look, Hadley works here. Isn't that a funny coincidence?" My father looked at me. I would like to tell you he was warm. He wasn't. He looked at me like he was trying to place me. Then he said, "That's nice, sweetheart. Listen, can someone help us get our keys? We've had a long drive." "Of course," I said. "Esme will get you checked in." I stepped back. I let them go. Teresa caught my eye and raised one eyebrow about 1/4 of an inch. I shook my head, just barely. Not yet. The rest of the family trickled in over the next 2 hours. Trent and Nora arrived together. He hugged me, actually hugged me, which surprised me, and said, "Wait, what? You work at the Anslow? Hadley, that's crazy. Are you kidding?" Nora was kinder. She squeezed my hand and said, "I'm so glad you're here. I'm so nervous. Tell me everything will be okay." "Everything will be okay," I told her. "I promise." Marley was the last to arrive. She was 24 now, working in marketing in Atlanta, and she walked into the lobby with her boyfriend on her arm and stopped dead when she saw me behind the front desk. "Hadley?" "Hi, Marls." She looked around the lobby. The chandelier I had picked out in a warehouse in Greenville. The fountain in the courtyard, visible through the open doors, which I had personally hauled to the patio in a wheelbarrow when the contractor's truck got a flat tire. The framed travel and leisure article on the wall. Her eyes went back to me. She didn't say anything. She just looked at me for a long moment and then she squeezed her boyfriend's arm and said very quietly, "Tate, can you go check us in? I need to talk to my sister for a minute." We stepped into the courtyard. The fountain was running. The hydrangeas I planted along the back wall were in full bloom. "Hadley," Marley said, "this is your hotel." I looked at her. "This is yours," she said. "Isn't it?" I nodded. "Hadley, oh my God." Her hand went up to her mouth. "Oh my God." Her hand went up to her mouth. "Oh my God." "Hadley, the article on the wall. That's about you. The owner is, it's you. It's your last name. Hadley." Why didn't? She was crying. I hadn't expected her to cry. "Marls. They don't know, do they?" "No. And Mom called you sweetheart and asked you to find management, didn't she?" I heard the front desk girl whispering about it when I walked in. I didn't answer. She knew. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "Are you going to tell them?" "I don't know yet," I said. "I'm thinking about it." "Hadley, they should know. Trent should know. Mom is going to." She stopped. She laughed, a wet laugh, the kind that comes out when you're trying not to cry and also trying not to laugh. "Mom is going to lose her mind. Yeah." "Are you mad at me?" she asked. "For not knowing?" "No, Marls, you were a kid. You're still a kid, basically. You didn't do anything." She hugged me. She held on too long and I held on back, because she was the only person in that family who had ever bothered to look at me twice, and I had missed her more than I realized. "Don't tell them," I said into her hair. "Not yet. I won't," she whispered. "I promise. But Hadley, please tell them yourself. Please, don't let them find out from someone else. They'll be, I know." She pulled back and looked at me, and I saw something in her face I hadn't seen in years. Not pity, not awkwardness, pride, like she had just figured out in a single second who I actually was. "I'm so proud of you," she said. It was the first time anyone in my family had ever said those words to me. I won't pretend I didn't go back to my office and sit on the floor for 10 minutes and cry. The rehearsal dinner was that night in the Magnolia Room. Caroline was in her element. She had on a navy dress and her grandmother's pearls, and she introduced herself to every guest as the mother of the groom, with the air of a duchess. My father gave a toast that mentioned Trent 12 times, Nora 4 times, Marley twice, and me 0. He didn't mean anything by it. He never did. He just genuinely didn't think of me. I sat at a table near the back with 2 of Nora's cousins and a great-aunt who told me a long story about a divorce in 1974. The Magnolia Room looked beautiful. The candles, the long tables, the linen runners, my team had done a flawless job. At one point during dinner, Caroline came over to my table. She had a glass of wine in her hand. She was a little flushed. "Hadley, sweetheart," she said, leaning down. "I just need to talk to you for 1 second. "Sure." "I noticed the napkins are folded into these little, what are they, swans? Birds? It's a little tacky, sweetie. Could you have someone refold them into a simple fan, just for the wedding tomorrow? Nora's family is, they're old Charleston, they're going to notice these things." She patted my shoulder. "Just have someone do it." "Thank you, sweetie." She walked away. I sat at the table for a moment. Then I caught Teresa's eye across the room, and I lifted my wine glass to her, and she lifted hers back, and we both smiled, the smile that 2 women smile when they have been waiting a very long time for a very specific moment. I did not refold the napkins. The wedding was on Saturday at 4. The ceremony was held in our chapel garden, another space I had restored personally, brick by brick. The reception was in the ballroom. Nora was a beautiful bride. Trent cried during his vows, which was something I had never seen him do, and I'll admit I revised my opinion of him slightly upward in that moment. Marley gave a maid of honor speech that was funny and warm. She looked at me twice during the speech, and once near the end, she said the word family in a way that meant something only the 2 of us understood. Caroline gave a speech too. She talked about Trent's accomplishments, his Clemson degree, his job at the consulting firm in Atlanta. She talked about how proud she and Bill were of their 2 beautiful children, Trent and Marley. She mentioned me exactly once. She called me Bill's older daughter and said I was always so independent, doing her own thing in Charleston. She made it sound like I lived in a van. I didn't react. I was sitting at a back table with the wedding planner and our chef, drinking water, watching my staff execute a service so smooth it looked choreographed. The moment came at the cake cutting. The cake had been a point of stress for Caroline all week. She had brought in a baker from Greenville, overriding the Charleston pastry chef I had recommended, who was nationally known, and she had insisted on a 5-tier monstrosity with sugar magnolias the size of dinner plates. When it was rolled out onto the floor, there was a polite gasp. It was very large. It was also, I'll be honest, very ugly. But it was Caroline's, and she beamed at it like she had birthed it. Trent and Nora cut the first slice. Photos were taken. Then Caroline tapped her glass with a butter knife. "Before we serve, I just want to thank a few people," she said. The room quieted. "I want to thank Roslyn, my baker from Greenville, who drove 4 hours to deliver this masterpiece. I want to thank the staff of the Anslow, who have been so accommodating this weekend." A polite smattering of applause. "And I want to thank the management, especially Teresa, our general manager, who has put up with my requests with such grace." Teresa, standing near the bar, gave a small bow. "And of course," Caroline went on, "I have to give a special thanks to whoever the actual owner of this place is. We've never met them, but they've built something really special here. So to the mystery owner, cheers." She raised her glass. The whole room raised their glasses. I was standing by the side door. I was holding a glass of champagne myself, which Teresa had handed me a moment before with a look I knew very well. I lifted my glass. "Cheers," I said. My voice was not loud, but the room was, by the strange acoustics of that ballroom, perfectly designed to carry a single voice from any corner to the center. Caroline looked over. So did my father. So did Trent. So did about 200 guests. I walked into the middle of the dance floor. I was still in my gray suit. I had not changed all day. I had not put on a dress. I had not done my hair. I looked like exactly what I was, which was the woman who had been quietly running this weekend from the inside. "My name is Hadley Whitcomb," I said. I didn't need a microphone. I'm Trent's sister. And I'm the owner of the Anslow. I have never in my life heard a room go that quiet that fast. Caroline's face. I cannot describe Caroline's face. It was the face of someone whose entire interior architecture had just collapsed in a single second. My father set down his glass. He set it down very carefully, like he was afraid he might drop it. "I bought this hotel 4 years ago," I said. "I restored it myself. I run it. The team you've all been so impressed with this weekend works for me. The Magnolia Room, the chapel garden, the bridal suite that smelled like lavender when Nora walked in. All of it, mine." I looked at Nora. She was crying but smiling. Marley was crying openly. Trent's mouth was slightly open. "Nora," I said, "you are a beautiful bride, and I am so glad my brother had the sense to marry you. This weekend is my gift to both of you. The whole thing. Full comp, the rooms, the food, the bar, the cake. Though Caroline, next time you really should have used the chef I recommended." There was a single bark of laughter from somewhere in the back. It was, I think, Nora's father. "To Trent and Nora," I said, and I raised my glass. The room raised theirs back, slowly, then more confidently, then with actual applause. I drank. I set the glass down. I walked out of the ballroom. I did not look at Caroline. I did not look at my father. I had no need to. I went back to my office and closed the door, and I sat at my desk, and I did not cry. I felt very, very calm. I felt like a person who had finally put down a heavy box she had been carrying so long she had forgotten she was carrying it. There was a knock at my door about 20 minutes later. It was my father. He came in. He sat down across from me. He looked older than he had that morning. "Hadley," he said. "Dad, I didn't know." "I know you didn't. You never told us. You never asked." He was quiet for a long time. He looked around my office, at the framed permit from the city, at the photograph of the ribbon cutting where Augustine Pell stood next to me, beaming, at the small portrait of my mother on the bookshelf, which I had taken from his attic when I was 22 and which he had never noticed was gone. He looked at the portrait for a long time. "That's your mother," he said. "Yes, I forgot I had that picture." "You didn't have it," I said. "I do," he nodded. He didn't fight me on it. I think, for the first time in his entire adult life, he understood that there were things he had let go of without noticing, and that the noticing, when it finally came, was going to hurt. "I'm sorry, Hadley," he said. "I didn't say it was okay, because it wasn't." I said, "Thank you for saying that." He nodded again. He stood up. At the door, he stopped. "Your mother would be very proud," he said. He left. I sat in my office for another hour. Marley came in at some point. She sat on the floor next to my chair the way she used to when she was small, and she leaned her head against my knee, and we didn't say anything for a long time. Caroline didn't come to my office that night. She didn't come the next morning either. She left at 6 a.m. without saying goodbye. I heard about it from the bell captain. I thought when I heard that I would feel angry. I didn't. I felt nothing at all, which was, in a way, the most surprising part. The months after the wedding were strange. Trent called me twice. Actual calls, not texts. The first one was awkward. The second one was a little less awkward. He asked me on the second call if I would consider coming up to Atlanta for Thanksgiving. I told him I'd think about it. I haven't decided yet. My father started writing me letters, actual letters on paper in his terrible handwriting. They were short and uncomfortable and mostly about the weather and his garden, but he sent one every 2 weeks and I read every single one. I have not written back. I don't know if I will. But I keep them in a drawer in my desk, and sometimes I take them out and look at them, and I think about how much easier it would have been if he had asked me one real question, just one, when I was 12 years old. Caroline has not contacted me at all. I hear, through Marley, that she tells people now that her older stepdaughter is a very successful hotelier in Charleston. I hear she has started saying it with pride. I hear she has even, once or twice, dropped the word stepdaughter and just said daughter. I don't know what to do with that yet. Marley comes to Charleston once a month. She stays in the Anslow. I comp her room every time, even though she always tries to pay, and last summer she brought Tate down to meet me properly, and we sat in the courtyard until 2 in the morning drinking wine and laughing about things we hadn't talked about in years. She told me, that night, that for as long as she could remember, she had felt like something was wrong in our family, like there was a person missing from every photograph. And she hadn't understood, until she saw me standing in that lobby in my gray suit, that the missing person was me. I closed on the Savannah property 6 months after the wedding. I named it the Whitcomb, not for my father, for me. There is a chair in the lobby of the Anslow. It's a wingback, upholstered in a deep green velvet, by the fireplace. I picked it out at an estate sale in Beaufort the week I bought the building. I sit in that chair sometimes, late at night, after the desk has gone quiet and the last guests have gone to bed. I sit there and I think about the dining room of my childhood. I think about the chicken thigh on my plate and the cake with the other girl's name on it and the salutatorian speech my father missed. And the way Caroline used to ask me to find someone in management, and then I think about the woman in the gray suit standing in the middle of the ballroom on a Saturday night in May, with 200 people looking at her, finally seeing her. The seat I sit in now is one I chose myself. I bought it. I carried it up the steps. I set it in the corner I wanted it in. Nobody is ever going to tell me to find another one. Sitting in that green velvet chair late at night, long after the wedding guests had gone home and the lobby had quieted down, I kept coming back to one simple truth about how this whole story unfolded. Nothing that happened to Caroline at my hotel that weekend was something I did to her. She did it to herself, slowly, over 30 years, one small dismissal at a time. Every chicken thigh on my plate, every cake with another girl's name iced over, every time she asked me to find someone in management in a building I owned. She was writing the ending of her own story, and I just happened to be the one holding the pen at the very last page. That's the part I want anyone listening to really hear. The people who treat you like you don't matter aren't building a relationship with you. They're building a habit, and habits, once set, are very hard for them to break, even when the evidence right in front of them screams that they should. My father stood in my office and looked at a framed travel and leisure article with my name on it, and he still asked me, the next morning, whether I was thinking of getting into management someday. The mind protects what it has already decided. So if you're the Hadley in your own family, I want to tell you 3 things I learned the long, hard way. The first is that your character is the only thing in this whole mess that you actually own. Caroline could take my seat at the dinner table. She could not take the woman I became at that table. Stay decent. Don't poison yourself trying to poison them. The cleanest revenge in the world is becoming someone they can no longer recognize, and you can't do that with a heart full of acid. The second is to use your head, not just your hurt. I could have screamed at Caroline in that lobby. I could have made a scene at the rehearsal dinner. Instead, I waited. I let the weekend speak for itself. I let her step on the rake she had been carrying around for 30 years. There is a kind of intelligence that only patience teaches, and it is worth more than any clever comeback we ever rehearse in the shower. The third is the hardest. You have to keep going when no one is clapping. I cleaned vomit out of a bridal suite at 2 in the morning when I was 20. I ate cereal for dinner 4 nights a week in a studio above a tobacconist's shop. Nobody in my family knew. Nobody in my family cared. I did it anyway. That is the only kind of work that ever really changes a life. The work no one sees, done for nobody's approval, for a future version of yourself you have to take on faith. The chair I sit in now, I bought myself. I carried it up the steps myself, and nobody in this world is ever going to tell me to find another one.